Forgotten. Chapter 1. 7:55 a.m. on Sunday, December 7, 1941. A Japanese attack was carried out by 353 Japanese naval airplanes, marking the beginning of a conflict that would change the course of history. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a devastating blow. A surprise attack that left more than 3,500 Americans dead and wounded, as well as a great deal of material damage. In the chaos that ensued, the nation was forced to confront a new reality. War was no longer a distant concern, but an immediate threat. The next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, in a determined speech, called on the U.S. Congress to declare war on Japan, a declaration that would reverberate around the world, announcing America's commitment to the fight. News of the war began to spread through streets, families, and homes as the country braced itself for what was to come. At 8:15 a.m. that day, in a small house in a quiet neighborhood in the city, a young man and his mother were sitting, listening to music on the radio. The soft voice of the announcer, which suddenly became serious and serious, interrupted the cheerful melody they usually listened to. Lucas, the young man, looked up at the words that changed the atmosphere of his home. The news of what was happening at Pearl Harbor was being reported with a frightening speed, as if the whole world had stopped for a moment. The instant Lucas heard the words, "Pearl Harbor has been attacked," a feeling of sadness and helplessness washed over him. He couldn't believe that his beautiful country, which had always been a safe place, was under attack. As he thought about the magnitude of what had just happened, his mind couldn't stop imagining the horrors that were taking place thousands of miles away. The Japanese planes flying overhead, the roar of explosions, the sirens, the chaos. It was impossible to fathom. At this moment, he saw his younger sister walking out into the garden, playing carefree with a ball. Lucas watched her with a mixture of love and pain, watching his little sister run around the grass, oblivious to the gravity of what was happening in the world. As she played, her image seemed to fade in slow motion before his eyes, as if time had stretched out. "Is dinner ready, Mom?" his sister asked in her cheerful voice, as if there was nothing to worry about. Lucas turned to his mother, and for a moment the world around him became distant. His mother's face, normally serene and full of love, now showed a hint of worry and sadness. She, who had always been his refuge, was as disoriented as he was by the news. But in an effort to remain calm, Lucas approached her and with a tight smile said, "Don't worry, Mom. Everything will be fine. We are in a safe place. Nothing will happen to us here." At that moment, the sound of a door opening. It was his father returning from a meeting with other military officers. His father, a high-ranking man in the military, had an imposing presence. But today, his eyes reflected something Lucas had never seen: fear. His father had heard the news and was visibly shaken. "They are killing us," he said in a serious tone, his voice cracking with worry. The man quickly walked over to the table, where he had a small bunker he had prepared years ago. He had made it just in case the day ever came when things went bad. "Honey, if anything happens, you'll take the truck and go with the boys there," he said, referring to the bunker. "There's food and water there, and they'll be safe. I don't want anything to happen to them." Lucas, his heart racing, looked at his father and asked, almost in a whisper, "Dad, are you going there?" His father, without hesitation, responded calmly with the attitude of someone who had already accepted his fate. "Yes, son, I will go to the conflict zone. But you, take care of your mother and your sister with everything you are, with your soul and your blood." Lucas nodded slowly, unable to articulate any more words. The weight of the situation was too great for a young man of his age. The father, looking at his wife and children, added, In the meantime, nothing is happening. But if things go badly, they will go to the bunker and you will be safe. I'm leaving, son. I love you." With those words, the man left the house, leaving his family in a state of total uncertainty. Lucas, now more than ever, felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. As he watched his father's figure walk away, a feeling of fear invaded him, but also a deep love for his family, for what it meant to protect them. He knew that, from that day on, nothing would be the same. Lucas had been deeply worried by his father's farewell. He could not imagine the danger he would face at that moment. The lack of food, the bone-chilling cold, and the constant threat of death. An indescribable anguish invaded him, and thoughts of his father fighting on the war front did not leave him in peace. The uncertainty of not knowing if he would return, if he would ever see his strong and determined face again, consumed him. Time at home was slowly slipping away. He couldn't concentrate on his studies, and that tormented him even more. Lucas was enrolled in a prestigious university where he studied medicine, with the hope of one day becoming a doctor capable of saving lives, but now his mind was only revolving around the horrors of the conflict, and his father far away from him, facing the unimaginable. However, amidst the storm of dark thoughts, there was something that managed to distract him, if only for a moment. A girl, a fleeting vision, a soul that crossed his path like a dream that seemed not to belong to that world. Her name was Lori. She was beautiful, but not in the way Lucas imagined a woman could be beautiful. She wasn't the common beauty of those who stood out in the crowd. Lori had a delicate face, a face that seemed to have come straight from a porcelain doll, so perfect that it was almost unreal. Her skin, pale as snow, seemed to reflect the light in an ethereal way, as if she were made of something intangible. Her body was so harmonious that it seemed to come from a Renaissance painting. Every curve and every line of her figure seemed to have been sculpted by artists who understood perfection in its purest form. Lori's hair fell in perfect spirals, like a river of silk that glided gracefully over her back. Each of her movements was like a dance, so subtle and ethereal that Lucas felt he could watch her for hours without getting tired. But what most caught Lucas's attention was not her hair or her perfect skin, but her eyes. They were a deep brown color, a brown that seemed to take sleep away from anyone who dared to look at them for too long. They were not blue eyes like those of many girls, nor green, like those of other people Lucas had met. They were an intense brown which hypnotized him, disconcerted him. That color seemed to be full of secrets, a mystery that trapped him, that kept him awake at night, tossing and turning in his bed, unable to stop thinking about them. Lucas couldn't forget her beauty. It was a haunting beauty, a beauty that gave him chills every time he saw her, not only because of her physical appearance, but because there was something else, something in her gaze that seemed to invade him, touch his soul. It was as if she knew secrets that he didn't understand, as if her eyes were able to see beyond what any normal human being could see. Despite his efforts to concentrate on his studies, Lori kept looming in his mind like a never-ending shadow. She was a welcome distraction, yes, but also one that robbed him of his focus and the seriousness with which he had always approached his future. He didn't know if he should feel grateful for the peace she offered him amidst the storm of thoughts about the war, or if he should fear what his feelings for her might mean at such an uncertain time. Lori didn't even notice Lucas's presence. He watched her from afar, enthralled by her beauty, a charm that seemed capable of stopping time. But Lori seemed oblivious to Lucas's gaze, busy in her own world, her thoughts. Lucas, however, couldn't take his eyes off her, as if her presence was the only thing that mattered at that moment. Until one day, during a class, something unexpected happened. The teacher, noticing that Lucas was looking at Laurie instead of the blackboard, couldn't help but make a comment. "Mr. Lucas, the board is in front of you," he said with a mocking smile. "And Miss Laurie is very far from it." Lucas blushed instantly, feeling the heat of his embarrassment take over his face. But at that moment, something strange happened. Laurie, who until then hadn't shown any indication that she noticed Lucas's presence, looked at him for the first time. Their eyes met, and a soft smile appeared on her lips. It was a genuine smile, as if she was recognizing someone who had somehow been there all along. Laurie then waved at him, and Lucas, surprised and nervous, responded with an awkward but sincere wave. After class, as the sun began to set, Lucas, still shocked by his interaction with Laurie, approached her. "Would you like to have a sandwich?" he asked, a little shy but determined to take advantage of the opportunity. Laurie, with a warm smile, accepted without hesitation. "Sure," she replied. "Let's go." The two of them headed to a small bench in the nearby park. During the meal, they talked about everything and nothing. They laughed together, sharing stories that seemed insignificant, but at the time felt like the beginning of something important. Time passed quickly, as if the hours were fading away while Lucas and Laurie shared that space. They didn't need much to feel connected, and that made them feel even closer to each other.